I was standing in the back of a crowded wedding hall, watching my so-called golden sister walk down the aisle in a dress that probably cost more than my entire year of tuition, knowing that I didn't want to be there, knowing I had been forced into that seat under threat, and knowing that my own father had looked me in the eyes and said, "If you don't come, I'm done paying for your education. So before you hear anything else, before you judge me for what I did next, I need to ask you this straight up. If your parent used your future as a weapon to control you, would you still play the obedient child? Or would you finally snap and choose yourself for once?" That wedding day was the final straw. But the truth is, this story didn't start there. It started the day I realized that in my family, there were two kinds of children. My sister, and then there was me. My sister Emma was 2 years older than me, and from the moment she was born, she could do no wrong. She was beautiful, outgoing, athletic, and effortlessly charming. Teachers loved her, relatives adored her, and my parents, especially my dad, practically worshipped the ground she walked on. I was the quiet one, the responsible one, the kid who stayed out of trouble and didn't ask for much. And for a long time, I thought that being low maintenance was a good thing. I thought if I just worked hard, stayed grateful, and didn't complain, I'd eventually earn the same love and respect. I was wrong. Growing up, the favoritism wasn't subtle. When Emma wanted to try ballet, my parents paid for lessons, costumes, and competitions. When she quit after 6 months because it was boring, nobody cared. When she wanted a car at 16, my dad co-signed a loan and helped her pick out a shiny new sedan. When I turned 16 and asked if I could maybe get help buying a used car so I could get to my part-time job, my dad laughed and told me to take the bus and stop being dramatic. Emma's mistakes were brushed off as learning experiences. Mine were treated like character flaws. If Emma forgot to do her chores, it was because she was busy and stressed. If I forgot, it was because I was lazy and ungrateful. By the time we both reached college age, the pattern was crystal clear. Emma decided to attend a private university out of state, with tuition that made my stomach drop when I saw the numbers. My parents didn't hesitate. My dad bragged to everyone about how his daughter was going to an elite school. He took out loans, dipped into savings, and never once complained about the cost. When it was my turn, I chose a more affordable public university, stayed in state, and applied for scholarships because I already knew better than to expect the same support. Even then, my dad made it clear that his help came with strings attached. He constantly reminded me how lucky I was, how easily he could stop paying if I ever disrespected him, and how I owed him for everything. Emma, meanwhile, breezed through life. She partied, switched majors twice, and graduated late, but it didn't matter. She met her now husband, Mark, during her final year. Mark came from money, real money, and suddenly Emma's life went from comfortable to luxurious. Expensive vacations, designer clothes, and engagement photos that looked like they belonged in a magazine. When she got engaged, my parents went into full wedding mode. My mom talked nonstop about venues and flowers. My dad beamed like he was the one getting married. And me? I was barely an afterthought. I tried to keep my distance during the wedding planning. Being around all that favoritism was exhausting. And honestly, it hurt. Emma had never been particularly kind to me. She wasn't outright cruel, but she had a way of dismissing my feelings, talking over me and acting like my problems were trivial. When I gently mentioned that I might not be able to attend every pre-wedding event because of my classes and work schedule, she rolled her eyes and said, "Wow, you always have to make everything about you." That was the moment I seriously considered skipping the wedding altogether. I thought about it for weeks. I imagined how peaceful it would be to just stay on campus, focus on my studies, and avoid the emotional minefield that my family had become. I wasn't in the wedding party, which honestly felt like a relief, and I figured my absence wouldn't even be noticed. So I finally worked up the courage to tell my dad. I chose my words carefully. I explained that the wedding weekend fell right before my final exams, that traveling back home would be stressful, and that I didn't feel emotionally comfortable attending given my strained relationship with Emma. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't accusing. I was just being honest. My dad didn't even let me finish. His face hardened in a way I recognized immediately, the look he got whenever I disappointed him. He told me that family comes first, that Emma would be devastated if I didn't show up, and that my feelings didn't matter in this situation. When I tried to push back, to explain that I was tired of always being second, he cut me off with the sentence that changed everything. He said, "If you don't attend your sister's wedding, Don't bother coming to me for tuition money anymore. I won't pay another cent. I remember feeling like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. I was still in school. I didn't have the savings to cover tuition on my own. Student loans were an option, but the thought of taking on massive debt because I refused to attend a wedding felt absurd and cruel. I asked him if he was serious, hoping maybe he'd back down. He didn't. He told me this was his final word. In that moment, it became painfully clear that my education, my future, was just another tool he could use to control me, so I went. I booked the ticket. I showed up. I smiled when people asked how excited I was. Inside, I felt hollow. The day of the wedding was a blur of forced politeness and quiet resentment. My parents barely spoke to me unless it was to instruct me to help with something. Emma looked radiant, surrounded by friends and praise, completely oblivious or indifferent to how small I felt standing in her shadow. And as I sat there, listening to speeches about how perfect she was, something inside me snapped. This is the part where I want you to pause for a second. That was the situation I was in, trapped between my own dignity and my financial survival. Before I tell you what I did next, I want you to think about it and comment what you would have done if you were me. Would you have swallowed your pride and stayed silent? Or would you have finally spoken up? Consequences be damned. Because when it came time for the open mic speeches, I made a decision. I hadn't planned it in advance. I didn't rehearse anything. But when the microphone was passed around and someone gestured toward me, expecting a sweet, forgettable message, I stood up. My hands were shaking, and my heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear myself think. I looked at Emma, at my parents, and at the sea of smiling faces who thought they knew our family, and I told the truth. I didn't scream or insult anyone. I spoke calmly, honestly. I congratulated Emma, of course, but then I talked about growing up in a family where love felt conditional. I talked about always being expected to support and celebrate others while my own needs were minimized. I said that I hoped Emma's marriage would be built on mutual respect and equality, because those were things I had often felt were missing in our family dynamic. The room went silent. You could feel the tension like electricity in the air. My dad's face turned red. My mom looked like she might cry. Emma stared at me like I had slapped her. I handed the microphone back and sat down, my legs barely holding me up. The rest of the night passed in awkward fragments. People avoided me. My dad wouldn't look at me. Emma didn't say a word. And when the wedding was over, my dad pulled me aside and told me that I had humiliated the family, that I was selfish and that I shouldn't be surprised if there were consequences. And there were. A week later, my dad called and told me he was serious about the tuition. He said I had crossed a line, and he was done enabling my disrespect. I cried after that call. Not because of the money, but because a part of me had still hoped he'd choose me, just once. Instead, he chose control. The aftermath was hard. I took out loans. I picked up extra shifts at work. I struggled, financially and emotionally. But something unexpected happened too. Without my dad's money hanging over my head, I felt freer. I stopped trying to earn approval that was never going to come. I limited contact with my family. Emma eventually reached out, angry at first, then defensive, and finally quiet. We don't talk much now, but for the first time the relationship feels honest. Looking back, that wedding was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. I lost financial support, but I gained self-respect. I learned that love shouldn't be conditional, and that sometimes standing up for yourself means losing people who never truly supported you in the first place. So that's my story. If you were on my side, like this video, subscribe for more stories like this because trust me, life has a way of getting even messier. And tell me in the comments, was I wrong for finally speaking up? Or would you have done the same? I'll see you all in the next story.